Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. What a weekend of motorsport. It was just ram-packed, action-packed. But the question is, what was the most dramatic out of everything that went on over the weekend? What was the most dramatic? Because there's drama coming out of our ears, and we're going to start off with, was this it first, Tiff, in Formula One? You can decide what was the most
this
dramatic.
Wasn't. We start with Formula One first, because there was drama, but it was by no means the most dramatic motorsport. We will find out later on what was. But yes, Imola, Ferrari meltdown drama. What a terrible weekend for the championship leaders to come home to Imola and all the great Tifosi there, and then get blown away by the Red Bulls, which were in a class of their own all weekend with the speed they had. But first Sainz crashes in qualifying or practice qualifying or FP2, 3 or whatever it was. Then Sainz crashes again in the race, which of course wasn't his fault. Ricciardo apologised for the first corner clash. But then LeClerc, there he is picking up some handy points for third, tries to get second off Perez in the fastest lap, and he's in the wall and ended up, was it seventh or stuff? So incredible drama. But the race itself, apart from Ferrari, the story was simply Ferrari meltdown. But it was another dull Imola again, really. I always say this track, it's such a shame. It's got such a legendary history. They always think it was great racing, but it's been processional for years. With only one DRS, I don't think these cars are really following that much closely. You had to be within, worked out, if you were 0.7 behind at the DRS zone, the problem was there were 2 corners after the DRS zone, those 2 last turns. So you tended to lose a little bit. So by the time you got to the straight, the DRS could catch you up. But of course, it wasn't in operation for the first half of the race, with the commentators rightly all moaning, get the DRS open. The shame to me is the track it's one of those ones that, it overreacted in my books towards the Senna, the terrible Senna tragedy. And then there were chicanes built all over the world. And to my mind, the simplest place at Imola is to get rid of the second chicane, the Villeneuve chicane. I think if Villeneuve, bless him up there in heaven, knew a chicane was being out, he'd go mental. The last thing he ever liked was chicanes. But if you had the first chicane and then a run down to the Tosa hairpin, we could have overtakes into Tosa, perhaps. And then also the Acqua Minerale. The trouble is, drivers love driving these tracks. It's got an elevation. It's very challenging. But it's not a racing circuit. And you go down to Acqua Minerale, this famous corner. You come round, was it Piratella? The one really challenging, fast corner at the top of the hill, the best corner on the track. But any advantage, go down the hill to Acqua Minerale, but then the braking zone's got a right-hand kink in it. So, of course, you can't get too wide. So you don't overtake into Acqua Minerale. There's another chicane. And then, it annoys me at times, the tracks.
It was a procession as it was, and there was the added excitement with the weather. So if it was nice weather. But you say about Charles and Ferrari, but they weren't too bad. Max and Red Bull, he is phenomenal.
The car was in his class, Perez, Perez shows, he can't, both times when he comes out on new tires, he's not the driver that can really go instantly fast on new rubber, because that's when LeClerc kept having a sniff at him every time he changed tires.
Yeah, you're right. But in the sprint race, Charles looked to be quite solid. He looked to be leading quite well, and then his went off, and then Max came through for the victory, and a well-deserved victory, pole position as well.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But not much happiness really down there. The others are happy. Valtteri, well, certainly, solid. The third and fourth, the 2 British boys. We have champions of the future. Lando, another fantastic, solid race. And of course, George, bouncing along in his Mercedes. He's said after the race, he's having backache, he's having lung problems, and he's just driving through an incredible, those cars to race are physically exhausting to a normal human being. But to add that horrendous punishment, he drives so well, George, and it's almost a shame that he's got into this Mercedes that's now rubbish. And
actually, funny enough,
I know, incredible. I'd like to point out, go back. What was my suggestion with the Lewis Ferrari after that? There was a race at the end of last season. I've forgotten what it decided something. Anyway, I actually said with the new formula coming, if I was Lewis, I'd take a year out to see how the Mercedes goes and then come back a year later, because there's always the chance that one of the big teams would have a design disaster. You know, we talked about a new board
to do that. What if they were having the fastest car? But what?
Lewis, listen to me. Lewis could have quit, which would have been a good impact on the race that happened, I think, at the end of last year, and stayed out for a year, and he would have been sitting pretty, but bravely came forward, and now, boy, he must be regretting doing another season with that.
Did you see what Toto Wolff said on the radio? Lewis, hi, sorry, what you needed to drive, I know this is undrivable and not what you deserve. Scores and results, we'll move from there, but this was a terrible race. It's from Germany, by the way. And Lewis said, yeah, no worries, Toto, let's keep working hard. But George just works fantastic. And Red Bull 1-2. That's the first 1-2 they've had for 5 years. Incredible.
I know both the top teams have been looking for that 1-2, you know, and they haven't had it for so long, you know, with the number 2 drivers not being up to the task. Although I say the number 2, Bottas, other people are happy, probably. Valtteri Bottas is pretty happy in 5th. Yuki Tsunoda, tricky conditions, survived well for 7th. Sebastian Vettel probably quite happy to get 8th after the dramas he'd had of missing races with COVID and then crashing back 10 times in Australia. And Alex Albon, a big shout out. I thought he drove a fantastic race for Williams from the back of the grid up to 11th. Some good news at Imola, but not that much drama apart from Ferrari. But lots of drama in the support races, both Formula 2 and Formula 3, all some changing conditions. In Formula 2, the sprint was won by Marcus Armstrong. The chaotic final, there were pace cars and off cars and crashes. And Théo Pourchaire, the highly rated French kid, came through. No British joy in Formula 2 with Ollie Caldwell and Jake Hughes, 12th for Jake, 14th for Ollie. Formula 3, again, fantastic race. The racing was good because the conditions changed. And of course, in the main race in Formula 2, you've got that tire difference between those that start on the soft and those that start on the medium, so they mix it all up. We did have a lot to shout about in the F3 race because Ollie Behrman had a fantastic. He was leading the final until nearly the end, but he got shuffled back to 4th, where the Czech Roman Stanek came through to win. And also Zach O'Sullivan, the other of the Autosport winners, he had a good weekend to finish 7th. So lots of British hope in Formula 3 for drivers of the future.
Not so much in
but
Formula
sad,
2.
We should have just mentioned Formula 2.
We haven't got a Brit in the top 10 of the standings of F2.
F2. But we ought to mention Jonny Edgar. It was. I'm so rudely forgot Johnny's first name. And we said last week in the podcast how he's had to pull out. You know, I mean, he's 18 years old and he's got his Crohn's disease is the problem. That's this awful weight losing, energy sapping. And for a kid of that age to have to, I mean, the dream of his dreams to be doing F3, and he was a really highly rated star. So get better soon, Johnny. It's a big challenge you've got ahead of you, but let's hope you can get through it.
So the main drama that you're referring to for this whole weekend wasn't at Imola. It must be BTCC, the new hybrid era of BTCC.
Well, yes, it was good. Talking BTCC, one of our weekend, the Porsche guy, Harry King, was 3rd in the Super Cup. Shout out for Harry, who's doing the World Super Cup Porsches, was 3rd. Yes, BTC, of course. I mean, probably more dramatic than the Formula 1. Well, pretty close to the Formula 1 because it wasn't overly dramatic, BTCC, as always. I mean, fantastic 4 wide, 3 wide. Some overtaking manoeuvres. You saw down Craner curves where they get inside on the long right, a bit of a nudge going on, and down Craner curves.
I mean, it's crazy. For those of you who don't know Craner Curve at Donington, it's this hill, the undulation is so scary. It's
so fabulous there. And of course, it's not just the touring, 3 touring car races. There's Porsches, Ginettas, Minis, Formula 4 single-seater. So a really dramatic weekend. But the big drama, really, at the BTC, the highlight was Jake Hill. We said he'd be good in the BMW. He qualified on pole position, finished 3rd in the first race, which was a great tussle out front, the whole race battling through. But then Jake got thrown out for ride height infringement at the end of that first race, got put to the back of the grid for race 2. So he started 28th, got up to 9th place at the end of race 2. And then the lucky draw of the balls put Jake back on pole position where he'd started the day for the reverse grid race, which he duly won, but at ease, really. So really the big drama by Jake Hill. Tom Ingram looked the class field as well. He won that first race, the second race after a fabulous battle with Gordon Shedden, which went right the way to the last lap. So it's Tom Ingram that leads the championship in points, Shedden second. Ash Sutton, only third of the points. Yeah, came second, I think, in the reverse grid, or third. Had a bit of a weekend. Their Fords aren't going that well. And of course, we had all the drama of Dan Camish's car catching fire in qualifying. So the Napa boys, that we love the colour scheme, but they had a pretty fraught first weekend. One name I'd like to bring out of the touring cars, there's George Gamble. Sort of name that leapt out of the timesheets when I looked at it, because he qualified, where was it, 5th on the grid. He's in a BMW. George has been on the Toka package for about 10 years. He's only 25, but he started in juniors, then did Ginettas. He's done the Porsche Super Cups. He went away and did some GT racing. I think it was Aston Martin GT4. So really impressive weekend. He came 6th in the first race, 3rd in the second race, had a messy reverse grid. So new name to look out for in British touring cars, George Gamble.
And they're fast, these the new hybrid cars, they're fast, setting lap records faster than they've ever been. But you expect cars to get fast every year on, year out.
And the way they were corner cutting, I wasn't going to go on to that, just because you mentioned fastest laps.
Ash Sutton, you see that picture of him next to the tyres.
But everyone was. There was a picture of Jake Hill on the exit of the chicane. So there's those nasty yellow, nasty curbs, and they put the tyre stack inside the nasty curbs. They probably think, well, they won't go near those, but of course not. They've got the suspension. They all just, I mean, it just looks stupid, a car with 4 wheels inside where the corner should be. And I said, well, just move the tyre stack out. Yeah. Because they're always going to apex on the tyre stack.
So then it's dangerous. People say then it's dangerous.
But why is it any more dangerous?
Exactly.
The apex, wherever you put the tyre stack is, they brush them. And yes, if they then... But
I like
or else
he actually posted a picture. He actually posted a picture of him doing it. It was, hang on a minute, you're just showing everybody. You are literally... all 4 wheels are off the track.
I mean, if the tyre stacks are a danger, then get really strict with the white line rule. If you're 4 wheels inside the white line, you cut in the corner, it's an advantage, you get a penalty. So either get strict with track limits, or stick the tyre walls. Have you lost someone?
No, I got Elliot here. It's okay, you carry on. I agree with you.
Expert.
So our expert Elliot Withers is with us.
So yeah, you got me going. But
so tell me, BTCC, that wasn't the drama, so it must be NASCAR. That must be the drama.
Talladega.
Was that the drama? Was that the most dramatic this weekend?
Actually, there is more drama to come. Because to be fair, Talladega wasn't the actual massive, huge drama. When you stop looking for Elliot, you turn me out, you can see in the corner of my eye. Talladega, for once, although it had masses of drama, it wasn't a super drama, because there's always the big one they talk about, this back straight normally, all doing 200 miles an hour, pirouetting, crashing, rolling. The only big crash this time actually happened on a restart. So they weren't right up to their full 200 mile an hour speed. But Joey Logano, the trouble is they got into a 4 pushing 4 situation, which you mustn't let happen. You shouldn't push. They all push at Talladega.
So you're saying this is the most dramatic thing all weekend?
Well, we haven't got to the finish yet. We haven't got to the finish. There wasn't the big one. It was a quieter Talladega. But yes, they were pushing, and Bubba Wallace got on the back of Joey Logano, but Joey Logano was already pushing the car in front of him. That's what you mustn't try and do, because if you get a squeezy squash, the one in the middle gets spat out, which happened to Joey. He went up, hit the wall, came right back into the pack on a restart. So they were all just, there was about 20 cars went off and about 10 cars had to retire from the damage. So there was a semi-big one, but then it settled down to quite a long, not that edgy, nervy race. And he ended up in single file going into the last 20 laps or so. There was single file, whereas normally they were at 3 wide, 2 wide, drama. But of course, the drama still comes at the end of the 3 hours, however long it takes to do a Talladega race. And there was a little comment that says, there are 29 occasions now the lead has changed on the last lap at Talladega. So whilst it might be boring for the 29 times the lead has been changed on the last lap. And on this time, it was my man Larson, Kyle Larson, in the number 5. But finally, he hasn't finished the top 5 of any super speedway race. He always gets caught in the big ones or the shunts or runs out of fuel. And this time he was pushing the leader, Eric Jones, on the last 3 laps, working it all out. And it's just like 200 mile an hour chess. When do I pull out? If I pull out, someone has to go with me. Someone has to push me. And he waited and waited until the last corner. He got the push he wanted. But then he went high towards the finish line. You either go low or go high. And the leader, what was it? I just said Eric Jones went high with him, and that pushed Larson higher, and that put Kurt Busch, that was on a run on the outside, smashed him straight into the wall. Mayhem ensued. Bubba Wallace was in the wall. And the guy that was pushing Larson to help him overtake the lead, Ross Chastain, just stayed low, came through to win his second ever NASCAR race.
Wow.
He's a melon man. He stood on the roof. He's a melon farmer. Probably not anymore. He knows successfully. He smashes melons and eats the melon. So there was a fair bit of drama, but not the normal Talladega mayhem.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time I can ever remember a Formula One race being with an overtake on the last lap was probably some race at the end of last year.
I can't remember that.
Yeah. But
no, I don't. There has
29 changes on the last lap is just phenomenal.
Yeah, well, that's Talladega. It's always good because someone will go for broke. And
so the most drama wasn't Talladega, which means it must be in a motorbike. So I know there was lots of drama with the motorbikes this weekend.
The motorbikes didn't let us down, but it wasn't the most dramatic sport of the weekend. We have more to come.
Wow.
Well, the two motorbike events, of course, this week, World Superbikes and Moto GP. The World Superbikes, which used to be just this battle between Jonathan Rea and Toprak Razgatlioglu.
I was going to say his name that time, Razgatlioglu.
You got close. I said it wrong, Razgatlioglu. But they've, of course, been joined this year by the Spaniard Alvaro Bautista. So it's become a three-way fight instead of the head-to-head battle. And the first two races went fairly normally, with Rea finishing first, and Razgatlioglu second, and Bautista third in both the race one and the Super Bowl race. But the drama came in the final race when Rea and Razgatlioglu clashed, and down they both went. So the major drama in the Superbikes was that, but that allowed Bautista to come through to win, and he now leads the World Superbike standings from Rea and Toprak. It's the Toprak this time.
Yeah, Toprak.
So yeah, they both blamed each other, but the racing got so close they ended up taking each other out. But Moto GP, the boys at Moto, they did not let the motorbike world down when it comes to drama.
I saw this. This was very dramatic. Anyone that didn't see it, go on.
Yeah, we'll come to the big one, but Moto 3, you'd always think it was going to be Moto 3, the kids.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the kids. out of the 32 or the 30 kids, only 2 retired. So 28 of the Moto 3 kids survived. It was a great race, actually, for Scott Ogden, this little kid we've got from England, this Team Vision track that's got these 2 British riders into Moto 3 because we haven't got any pipeline to the top. And Scott qualified 8th. So by far, I think he qualified the first round about 25th, and he's just slowly come up. Looks a really talented kid. He got to 7th on the opening lap, but then he ended up his huge pack and ended up 13th. But finishing 13th, which is still his best result, he was 0.272 seconds. That's a quarter of a second behind 8th place.
Wow.
So he was just a quarter of a second off of finishing 8th, which would have been fantastic. But anyway, name for the future motorbikes for Britain, hopefully Scott Ogden. But yes, it was... not even Moto GP that provided the maximum drama, because they did their own bit. We have more.
What have we got left?
Moto GP Rally was good, but we've got to go on to Moto 2 in a minute. Moto GP was a great race. Yeah, we got 3 of the 3 Grand Prix, obviously, in Moto. It saw Fabio Quartararo, the French champion from last year, come back on form with his Yamaha. He won a good race, closely fought. He managed to get by... Johan Mir, the Spaniard on Suzuki, who was leading.
Is Portimao good for bikes? Is it a good circuit for bikes?
Epic. Yeah, well, you see them around there. It's just epic. Yeah. But it's turn 1 is so quick for bikes. There's a turn 1, the drama happened. The drama of MotoGP, when Jack Miller, the Aussie on his Ducati, was trying to get by Mir, and he slipped in all the way down that long straight. And he got on the inside, but Mir can brake really late. He's one of the latest breakers. And Miller tried to hang on, but he was on the inside. He braked as late as he could, and the front folded underneath him, and he took Mir out. So the 2 of the main MotoGP's boys in the gravel. And on that occasion, certainly Miller said it was his fault, but that was the drama. The biggest drama on the bikes was, say, for Moto 2. And I've never seen anything like this.
It looked like somebody put a stinger down. The police figures.
Yeah. It was a great race. I mean, the Brits were doing well. We still got these two Brits doing well in Moto 2. Jake Dixon qualified third, and who was it? Sam Lowes was sixth. But Jake got a bad start. He's running about seventh. Probably luckily he was running seventh, because on about the fourth lap, I don't know what lap, fifth lap or whatever, there was threat of rain, there was spits of rain. And the leaders came into turn one, which is a pretty quick corner, and headed down towards the little kink that is turn two when they hit some rain. And I mean, the first three or four just dropped it. I mean, they all got off the gravel trap. We went out to a wide shot. There was something like 15 bikes went down. Sam Lowe sadly was amongst it. Fantastic. Jake Dixon managed to stay up. But it was terrifying because, of course, the riders can fall off on their own, but then they're lying in the gravel. But if one of those bikes comes at 100 miles, the weight of a bike and hits
scary stuff.
And there was a couple
we laugh and we just in awe, really.
And the bike riders know it, so they stand up quick and they jump out of the way. You know, they're watching one bike hit another bike. And from the long shot, you didn't notice the bike, but the rider was still on the bike and it burst into a ball of flames. It was like a Vietnam, helicopter attacking war movie. It was terrifying. I mean, everybody was, the commentators which just don't look, because, any one of those bikes.
Well, as soon as they pull the camera away, it's bad.
Oh, it was. But the drama didn't even end there with this most what's that word? Apocalyptic crash.
Yeah.
Because poor old Jake Dixon, he was on pole in Indonesia. I don't know, he was up front in Indonesia, and he got to third, then he dropped it. He hasn't got a podium yet. He was on pole for the restart, a 7-lap sprint to glory. And he led off the start and got about half round. They've been kept on the grid a long time while they cleared up the mess. It was very cold, so the tyres were cold. And he got to a right-hand at the top of the hill and just lost the front end. I haven't even seen an interview for him. I mean, he was crying after Indonesia when he blew it. And he could have so easily had the win. And, Jake, we're all with you. I'm sure, Susie was in tears afterwards. But a little bit of just to end the motorbikes race, it was a nice little story that Joe Roberts came through to win that shortened race from the USA. Not Kenny Roberts' son, that everybody thinks Joe Roberts is. He's in his 6th season of Moto 2. I mean, he's talented, but he's never had a win. So a little happy story at the end of Moto 2 for the Americans, but not for the Brits.
Okay, so that is obviously the drama. That's the drama you've been referring to all the way through.
For bikes, but I think, I'm not going on crash drama. They won the crash drama by miles, the motorbike boys. They always do, because it's just terrifying when they go down. One goes down, it scares me. The high sides, they do. But I think for drama of an overall motorsport event of the weekend goes the Rally Boys. The World Rally Championship.
I called it.
World Rally Championship. Went to Croatia, and it was just foul weather. I mean, it was pouring and raining, and the tracks, it was tarmac rally. And I kept on seeing punctures on the news. And it was just narrow, gravel strewn. Every course was cutting corners, especially in the wet. Pirelli were a bit criticised. It's not really their fault. They came out with these sort of soft tyres for the wet, which probably had soft sidewalls, which maybe are more puncture prone. So obviously, I don't expect too much gravel and rocks on a tarmac stage. I mean, but it started off with drama. I mean, the first stage alone, Eskapeka Lappi, the Finnish guy having a sort of, he's on and off with Toyota, and he clipped a rock on an Apex left-hand drive car, big rock, but he just clipped the rock and suspension. He was out. He came back later on, did some really good times, because of course they can rejoin it. It was quick. And Elfyn Evans, our British hope, a Welshman, he got a punch. I think it was the first or second stage. He lost 2 minutes right from the word go, so he's pretty much out of contention.
Like you said about the punctures, the tyre manufacturers asked to build the tyre in a certain way. It always amazed me in rallycross how they get so few punctures. Because they got
tyres made. Yes, I think the Pirelli ought to put their rallycross cars on the rally cars. But then all the drivers were like, "I've got no grip. They're all moaning like mad. I've got punctures. We'll give you a harder time. I've got no grip. I mean, drivers will always be drivers. For more drama, poor old Adrian Formeau, who's this French kid with the Chancellor's Ford, who keeps on having big shunts but going fast. He ended up in someone's front gun on the second corner of a stage, or maybe stage 2 turned. I think someone else had almost gone off on board, but very side. It was a tricky corner. So that was the early drama. Gus Greensmith, the British driving form, was having a really good rally, but he started getting punctures. And towards I think it was on the second day, he ended up with 3 punctures on a stage. So he just had to quit the stage because he had nothing left to drive on. Then Oliver Solberg, Petter's kid, who was going quite well in his Toyota, or was he Hyundai? One of the two. He had this big shunt that burst into flames. Dramatic shots. Luckily, it was only the back end of the car, but back end of the car's the fuel tank, so maybe not much fuel. It wasn't that big a fire, so maybe it was just a tiny leak. So we had the dramatic images of a fire, and there was just so much. You just see these guys going through these stages, how they stay on them at all. Really on pace.
Incredible. The driving skill is just phenomenal.
But it all came down to the Sunday last 2 stages, where the maximum drama of last weekend, despite what we've already heard before, because Kalle Rovanperä, this, what is he, 21 years old now, I think, is this Finnish kid. He was just dominating the rally. I mean, he was cruising along, as good as anyone goes. Toyota he's in. And then all of a sudden on the Friday, he had a 1.25 minute lead on the Saturday, sorry. And he just had everything under control. Everyone else was falling off, having punctures. This amazing kid, Kalle. But he had a puncture on Saturday and he'd lost a minute of his lead. So his lead was down to 18 seconds. But still, by Sunday morning, he'd increased it to 30 seconds. He's just cruising. I mean, just the most amazing calmness for this future talent that just looks like he's going to dominate rallying for a while to come. But the 19th, the penultimate stage, there was torrential rain. It bucketed it down. Well, not Stanek, who was chasing for the lead, who was the one who was now, 30 seconds behind, found some super wet weather or soft tyres. He managed to find the right tyres for this torrential downpour. And he turned, how much did he take? It was 30 seconds. He took over 30 seconds off of the leader. So he turned it into a 1.4 second lead.
Wow.
So the 30 seconds disappeared. So there was now 1 stage to go. And Rovanperä, that dominated the rally, was now second. In fact, on those torrential rain, the WRC2 cars, they're normally sort of in the 10th overall, just behind all the manufacturers, they were quicker. The top 10 was filled with 7. Tyres. Yeah, because they had probably narrower tyres or soft. I don't know what tyres they had. In fact, a quick shout out to Chris Ingram, because he was 3rd overall on that penultimate stage in the foulest of conditions. So fantastic to shout out. And so then we come to the final test, which was the extra points, because it's that, what do they call it, speed test? I don't know what they call it now, the rally. And the drama was there because Stanek now had the lead, but Rovanperä coolly came through and turned a 1.4 second deficit, an amazing stage time, into a 4.3 second win from just, one last stage, having looked like he'd lost it. And just to add a little bit of extra to that power stage, that's what they call it, we had the image of Thierry Neuville going flying off the road, nearly rolling over, getting back on again, losing a minute, but still keeping his 3rd place. So Neuville, which is why the power stage is quite exciting, because he was miles behind, but if he hadn't been for the extra points to the power stage, he probably wouldn't have bothered to have a go. So he still finished 3rd. Craig Breen had a quietish weekend, finished 4th, didn't end up anywhere in the ditches. Elfin came back to finish 5th, probably the last surviving manufacturer's car. Chris Ingram ended up 11th overall, 5th in the WRC2 class. So congrats to him. But I mean, just what a dramatic weekend. I just want to point out the drama probably was completely eclipsed by, of course, Southampton, the red and white boys coming from 2-0 down and Brighton to equalise.
Everybody's just
2-0 and you it up 2-0 and
everyone's just switched off. And I was going to ask Elliot, who is here, his favourite moment of the weekend in terms of motor racing, because that's what this podcast is, Tiff, not football.
Yes, all right, no, all right. I've got carried away. Red and white, red and white, red army, red army.
Favourite moment for the podcast, for motorsport this weekend?
Friday's qualifying in the F1. It's got to be the top of it, just because the lack of preparation they had going into it made it far more interesting.
Okay, Friday, there you go. You heard it from our expert.
What was it?
Qualifying was very interesting because the lack of preparation they had.
Is he wearing an anorak? Has he got his anorak on now? You got your anorak on, Oliver?
Thanks for joining us.
Next week.
Oh,
before we go.
Yeah, next week's good because next week
we're going to be in America.
We're going to be in America.
We are going to be doing this podcast somehow in a week's time from America. I'm not sure how much of the sport we will have seen.
Well, there's no Formula One, which is a shame.
No, but America's where most of it is next year. There's great IndyCar, back Barber Park, amazing scenic uphill, downhill track. Not much overtake, tricky to overtake.
Not in Ohio by any chance, is it?
It's in Alabama. Where's Alabama? That's down south. Isn't it?
Miles away.
IMSA sports cars. We can get on some internet and watch that because that's Laguna Seca, fantastic uphill, downhill.
Away.
But back in Europe, Barcelona, Moto GP, bound to entertain always. So keep an eye out for Barcelona, Moto GP in Spain. NASCAR, of course, around the Dover Bowl. Formula E, give them a shout. Monaco last year was actually one of the best Formula E races, racing on a proper track. Of course, they're still saving power and pretty much lifting and coasting everywhere. But apart from that, they'll all be close because they've all got the same amount of power, so they can't run away with it. In Britain, you're going to watch some live motorsport. Then go to Alton Park for the Superbikes in Alton.
Lovely
What
stuff.
drama!
Oh, the drama of World Rally.
And I was watching most of this last night, by the way. I got home from the football. I was watching the football live in Brighton. So I was doing a lot of watching to collect all that news. I was up until the early hours this morning, but so entertaining. Motorsport can be filled
Can we
with
go
drama.
now? Because I've got to make Elliot a cup of tea. See you. Thanks for joining. Cheers.